All right, let's talk about the box that completely changed the world, the television. We're going to dive into the history of this incredible device, one that went from a wild, almost impossible dream to the glowing heart of pretty much every living room on the planet.
Just think about that for a second. The year is 1908, and you hear someone say distant electric vision. I mean, that sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel, right? It was this idea that you could somehow see events as they were happening from miles and miles away. Pure magic.
So, the big question is, how did we get from that wild concept to, binge watching our favorite shows for hours on end? Well, it was a long road, packed with brilliant minds who were often racing against each other, and it all started down a technological path you might not expect. You see, the very first attempts at making a television weren't electronic at all. They were actually mechanical. We're talking about these amazing contraptions of spinning parts, gears, and whirring discs, all trying to capture and recreate light. And the key piece of this puzzle was the Nipcow disc, which was patented way back in 1884. The best way to think of it is like a really primitive scanner. As this disc spun around, each little hole would capture one tiny slice of an image. And if you spun it fast enough, your brain would blur all those slices together into one very crude, flickering picture. And the guy who really ran with this idea was a Scottish inventor named John Logie Baird. What's absolutely incredible here is just how fast he made progress. In just 3 years, he went from showing off blurry silhouettes to broadcasting a signal clear across the Atlantic Ocean. A little fun fact, his first test subject wasn't even a real person. It was a ventriloquist dummy named Stookie Bill because its painted face had the high contrast his early system needed to even see anything. But look, as cool as this was, these mechanical systems had a hard limit. The pictures were tiny, they were dim, and they flickered like crazy. To get the clear, stable images we're all used to today, TV had to make a huge leap. It had to get rid of all the moving parts and go fully electric. And this, right here, is the single most important moment in the history of television. The move from mechanical to electronic wasn't just a small upgrade. No, it was a complete and total reinvention of the entire idea. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. We went from clunky spinning disks to silent, precise electron beams. We jumped from a fuzzy 30 lines of resolution to over 400. It was literally like going from a wind-up music box to a supercomputer. This wasn't just about clearer pictures. It meant you could finally broadcast things like live sports or complex movies, stuff that was just impossible on a flickering mechanical screen. The door was now wide open. The technology at the heart of this whole revolution was the Cathode Ray Tube, the CRT. So instead of a disc with holes, you have this beam of electrons shooting at a screen coated with phosphor. And by steering that beam back and forth, you could essentially paint a picture with light, line by line, but so incredibly fast it looked like a solid, moving image. Now, this new era was kicked off by a classic David versus Goliath story. On one side, you've got Philo Farnsworth, this brilliant young farm boy, a total independent genius. And on the other, you've got Vladimir Zworykin, who was backed by the massive corporate power of RCA. They fought for years in court over who really invented electronic TV, but in the end, the giant, RCA, had to admit defeat and agree to pay royalties to Farnsworth. Okay, so the legal battles are over, World War II is finally coming to an end, and the stage is set. The technology was there, and believe me, people were ready for a brand new kind of entertainment. Television was about to take over the world. I mean, just look at this chart. It's not a gentle curve, it's an explosion. In 1946, having a TV was a huge deal, a total rarity. Less than a decade later, more than half of all homes had one, and by 1962, it was actually weird if you didn't have a TV. The speed at which this thing became an essential piece of furniture is just mind-blowing. And one of the biggest reasons for this crazy growth was standardization. Everyone agreed on one single technical standard. This was a game changer because it meant any company could make a TV that would work with any broadcast, creating one single giant market for everyone.
But, all those shows and broadcasts cost money. So how was this new industry going to pay for itself? Well, that brings us to a really pivotal moment that defined American television for decades to come, the birth of the TV commercial.
$9. That's it. This is the price tag that launched a multi-billion-dollar industry. This was reportedly the cost of the very first legal paid television ad, just $9. So here's the story. On July 1st, 1941, right before a baseball game in New York, the Bulova Watch Company aired an ad.
And it was ridiculously simple. It was just a picture of a watch on the screen for about a minute. That's it. But that simple $9 ad proved it was possible. It opened the floodgates and created the economic engine that would power TV for the rest of the century.
But of course, the story doesn't end there. Not by a long shot. That black and white box in the living room just kept changing, kept evolving, adding more tech, more choice, and way more interactivity. First, we got color in the 50s, though it took a long time for it to become common. Then in the 70s, cable TV came along and just blew the doors off everything, giving us hundreds of channels. Then came the digital revolution of the 90s, with its crystal-clear picture and sound. And finally, the internet crashed the party, merging with the screen to create the smart TVs we all have today. Every single step fundamentally changed our relationship with that screen.
And that brings us to right now. The journey from a whirring mechanical disc to a 4K screen that's connected to all the information in the world, it's just been incredible. But it does leave us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on. In a world where we watch everything on our phones, our tablets, and our laptops, what does the word television even mean anymore? Something to think about.